it's interesting to see people come out in defense of the Fallout TV show and try to tell you, oh, but the creator likes it, nobody cares. Okay, why don't you watch the show and come to your own opinion? Okay, I'm sure Neil Druckmann says nice things about The Last of Us, right? The TV series. Does that make it good? You know, he directly worked on it. So having some Western hack come out and say, well, actually, I think Fallout's actually pretty good. He is shilling for his own brand. Like, it's like you don't know how this works. Okay? All of these people are sellouts. They have no integrity. They will say and do anything to get people to pay attention to them. Okay? You should never look at a creator of a brand to see if an adaptation is a faithful recreation of the source material, okay? Like, you should never do that. And again, this has been an ongoing issue for a long time because, like, you know, Sonic the Hedgehog was not good. Monster Hunter was not good, right? Castlevania is one of the most, like, abhorrent things in gaming culture right now, right? And yet you see a lot of people try to come out and say, like, oh, well, actually, these are some of the best video game adaptations ever. No, they aren't. If you were actually a fan of the brand, if you knew what the series was actually supposed to be about, if you understood the lore, you would understand that these are not faithful adaptations, and as a result, should be dismissed forthright. Right? There should be no respect given to any alterations or changes made to the source material that are clearly inclined to push a woke agenda. You know, Castlevania is the most obvious example of this, I would say, because of its, like, anti-religious sentiment and, like, a generally pretty pro-Christian series. But, like, when you look at, like, all of these series, you see the same reoccurring things, right? And then when you look at, like, the actually good video game adaptations, you know, stuff like the Super Mario Bros. Movie, you see critics, like, come out and religiously try and pretend that the movie was disappointing, that it wasn't that good, that it wasn't that big of a success, that The Last of Us was way better going. Like, they'll do everything they possibly can to kind of downplay the reality that the movie was way better than anybody expected. You know, I've watched the Super Mario Bros. Movie several times now, and it really impresses me just how much fun it is to watch, right? Like, they nailed the setting and the general idea and the characters and the voice acting. Like, the movie fundamentally has no flaws at all. Right? And yet, you still see people try to tell you Castlevania is better. You still see people try to pretend that, like, Halo's going to have some resurgence in popularity or that the Fallout show is good, right? Like, you're seeing all of these people do everything they possibly can to try and prop up the next big thing. Right? You know, people noticed immediately that the Fallout show was shit. But what do I see on social media? You know, PKA, you know, fucking FPS Kyle coming out and trying to say that, like, well, actually, this is one of the best shows I've ever seen. Like, one of the best game adaptations I've ever seen. Like, you know, when actual fans understand, like, the lore changes they made and all the changes they made. Like, and again, this is just a repeat of Cyberpunk Edgerunners, I think, in which in order to try and prop up a declining brand, the establishment is trying to use an adaptation. They're trying to use, like, the pigeon-brained, like, mass audience to try and manipulate them into thinking these games are way more popular than they actually are. Right? It is astounding to me how, in reality, Halo is a completely irrelevant brand that has no future, has no real legacy, has no iconography. Like, who do you know who was demanding for Master Chief to be in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, right? Like, the reality is Master Chief is not a video game icon, even though throughout the 2000s he was always purported to be one, right? Like, in reality, Master Chief is not an interesting character. He doesn't have a good design. He doesn't have, like, any interesting lore. He didn't leave much of an impact on the industry. He wasn't innovative, right? the reality is the generic Space Marine dude, like, that goes more to Doom Guy, right? That goes, the FPS, like, there are, like, more popular FPS titles, right? Like, Halo essentially appealed to the kind of person who doesn't play a lot of video games. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Plenty of people love Tetris, plenty of people love Pokemon, right? Like, again, you can argue that there are aspects, like, again, there is nothing wrong with having games be popular among a mass demographic, right? But the reality is, if like hardcore gamers don't really consider your video game icon to be relevant or important, like, why exactly should we pretend to care, right? And this is the trend with all of these video game adaptations. Like, why should I care about this show based on a mediocre IP that I don't care about? Yet every single time this happens. Oh yeah, by the way, I did notice when FPS Kyle was trying to hype up Fallout, he tries to like specifically cite The Last of Us as the greatest video game adaptation ever made, but he can't remember the title of the show, right? He's never played the original game. He has no intention of playing the original game. He knows nothing about it. He's had people on, like, debating the ending, but he doesn't remember the actual title of the show, right? And, like, you can watch all of his opinions on every other show that comes out, like everything else that gets made, everything else that gets produced, everything else the show, everything else they review, and you realize very, very quickly that these plebs don't know what they're talking about. And yes, that does include Taylor, for those of you who think I'm just talking about Kyle and Woody. But, like, anyway, like, that is the reality here, is that people simply consume product and then move on to the next product, right? People like me will talk about the Wonderful 101 and Eternal Darkness and Resident Evil like remake for, like, forever. Talk about like how good they are and what great innovators they were and like how what major game changers they were. But people like FPS Kyle, the mass market, the people who are shilling this stuff, they can't even remember the names of these shows a year after they get produced, right? Like, that is the reality behind the Fallout show. And seeing people try to say that, like, oh, this is going to bring Fallout into relevancy. Okay, what happened to Starfield? Okay, Starfield just came out. It's not even fully a year old yet. And yet that game has fallen off a map. Like, there is going to be no recovery for the Fallout IP, right? Just like there was no recovery for Halo or Castlevania or Sonic the Hedgehog. Those IPs are more dead than ever, if anything. Like, to me, I think this the industry has been trying, like, ever since the Mario movie has been announced, to try to pretend that, like, everything other than the Nintendo adaptations are, like, absolutely killer products. They've been trying to meme everything into being these huge success stories, and yet, like, the Mario movie mogged them all. Like, honestly, in my opinion, without even really trying. And, like, you can argue that, like, nobody cares and nobody's acknowledging it. Like, but the reality is that the movie is still very, very much discussed and talked about. Like, we have a sequel coming out. We have, like, the Zelda movie coming out. I have people in my comment section right now bragging about how, like, Dungeons and Dragons got a movie before Zelda. Yeah, because it's a Western property, right? As opposed to Zelda, which is a foreign brand. Like, come on, bro. Like, Nintendo hasn't produced any adaptations of their works, right? Because they were concerned about the quality after the live action Mario movie, right? So, like, to me, I don't really take, like, the constant bleeding about, like, oh, the Fallout show is the greatest ever. Like, I at this point am, like, going completely dark. I don't care what anybody tells me. Like, I will not be paying attention to any of this ever again. Okay, I don't care about Cyberpunk Edge Runners. I don't care about Halo. I don't care about Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't care about Castlevania. I don't care about Fallout. To this day, I still have not seen a clip from the show. I saw that shit on Amazon Prime and I just scrolled right past it to, like, watch Lupin the Third or some shit, right? Like, I scrolled past that and watched, like, some Mario movie, I think, at one point. Did I see that day? Oh, well, anyway. Like, yeah, I saw the Mario movie recently, okay? Like, I didn't watch the Fallout show. I have no intention. It's there for free on Amazon right now, and here I am watching things I've seen before because the Fallout show is not worth my time. I would rather sit here and do nothing than watch the Fallout show because that trash is not even worth thinking about.